There's a difference when you breathe it in, so don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Here in the dark, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the fact.
There's Andy. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday morning. Hair of the dog. We were not on Monday in celebration of Labor Day. So for those of you who don't know, for the two of you who don't know, we are currently in the works of finalizing our union membership. So it seemed appropriate for us to take, Labor Day off and celebrate it. Celebrate everything that labor and unions mean, and be a part of that. So I slept in. That's what I did for my Labor Day. I never sleep in. So Andy, how did you
can't say that anymore?
Yeah, the one day out of the year that I actually slept in. So Andy, how did you spend your day off on Monday?
Recovering.
Recover from your vacation?
Yes. We went camping, and this is Canadian weather is like a box of chocolates.
Right.
You know what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a smorgasbord of different weather things happen. From all-out downpours and windstorms to hot, sunny, sticky, lovely days, and so it was an absolute amazing time. Now, I use the word camping, incorrectly, because I think the term is glamping.
Ah, yes.
Right? Because if you have a item that you stay in that has a microwave, apparently you can't call it camping.
You can't.
So, and we brought a satellite dish and receiver and 42-inch flat screen television.
Are you kidding me? That's
No,
not
we set it up underneath my buddy's awning so that we could watch, sporting events. And we originally, the whole idea was there's a local, I live about 20 minutes just outside a city called Peterborough in Ontario. And there's a local boxing gentleman who is originally from Peterborough, who now trains in Las Vegas, named Cody Crowley. And Cody Crowley is one of the highest ranked contenders in the welterweight division in boxing. And he fought at the Microsoft Center in Los Angeles on Sunday night on the undercard. And so the idea was that we were trying to find him on pay-per-view, or I believe that it was Fox Sports 1 that was broadcasting this event.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that's not available in Canada, so we didn't actually get a chance to see it. But we did watch 5 baseball games because the Blue Jays had a 5-game series in 4 days against the Red Sox. So we had a little viewing area set up. And if you positioned your chair in the evening just right, it was just a slight head tilt from the television to the fire pit, right? If you did it right. So you could stay reasonably warm on the fire while maintaining eye contact with the sporting event. So it's quite lovely. There was quite a bit of cold weather, though, so it was a little bit. I've got a bit of a stuffy head and sore throat from just being cold and then warm and cold and warm back and forth. Typical Canadian fall.
Right. Well, here in Chicago we have the same thing, and shout out to Amira Napier. She was posting about the snow in Colorado, so I guess that's coming our way. Yeah. So, woot!
Why can't they just divert it to Los Angeles where they need snow?
I don't know. Too many gay people, I guess. That's apparently how it works. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
well,
wasn't
if you
expecting that
listen,
answer.
no, I know. Well, okay, so part of the work that I have to do is monitoring what corporate media puts out. So this morning it was Fox News and Breitbart. So I'm just a little there's not enough coffee in the world to prepare for all of that. So yeah, and
You need
also
one. You need one of these.
well, yeah, I have the little one, So this morning I had planned to do an entirely different storyline, but then some news came out, and a baby journalist, a new journalist out of New York, who I think that we're going to see some great things from him. He's really starting out, so his production qualities probably needs a little tweaking, and maybe Andy, we should have a chat with him. Because what we do here on our network is we extend our technology tools and know-how to progressive causes, organizations, things like that. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the context of some of these stories. But I like where he's going. And he actually broke a story and sent me a link yesterday. So I was not prepared to discuss this morning, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some things that basically the grift is real. So before we get into that, I do want to be objective, and I was discussing this with Andy. When people do bad, you call them out. When people do good, you gotta elevate that too. So part of what I stumbled across, and this started with Bloomberg News, is the Trump administration actually did something good. Now, Andy,
Dun, dun, dun.
you're right. So Andy, I'm gonna lay this one on you here. So this is what I stumbled across this morning, and it's a story I've been working on because in the U.S. here we don't get a whole lot of what's going on with the Uighurs. So in China, in the western portion of China, there's indigenous people there who are primarily Muslim, and they have their own culture and society and cities, and they're humming along doing really well. But we know that China does not like anybody out of order or not adhering to party rule. So what they've been doing is targeting the Uyghurs, and this has been going on for quite a while. They don't like that they're Muslim. They don't like that they're religious at all, let alone being Muslim. Don't like that they have a strong culture and family traditions and all of this. So what they've been doing is taking Uyghurs, particularly the men, arresting them, rounding them up, blindfolding them. We've seen photos online that have been smuggled out or drone footage where they're lining them up just like they did in the Holocaust, the Germans did on the way to the concentration camps. Well, they're taking the men to these camps and using them as, they're torturing them, they're killing them, and then they're using them as slave labor. So this is a story that came out. So I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, Mike Pompeo from the Trump administration announced that there were certain visas for Chinese officials that were not going to be renewed and rescinded, which was a big deal. But it related to what was going on with the Uyghur community. So this morning, Kevin Cirilli for Bloomberg put out this story about firms are being banned. There are some Chinese companies being banned. And why this is significant is the products that these particular Chinese companies supply. We import from them textiles, cotton, and some other source materials for products. So this is a big deal. And when I was reading this story, I was thinking, okay, the interview that we just aired last night with J. Brandon Johnson interviewing candidate Jenna, dang it, Andy, Jenna
Dang it.
No, that's not her name. You don't even know, do you?
I'm still recovering.
Wadsworth. I'm sorry, Jenna. It's too early. Jenna Wadsworth. She's this dynamic candidate. She's female, she's young, she's a farmer, she's already been elected for a decade doing some amazing things, and she's LGBTQ, and she's running for Commissioner of Agriculture in North Carolina. And if you didn't catch that interview, I posted a link. Go watch it, because there are things that I thought I knew, and she completely educated me. Like, I did not know that there are just 4 companies that control all of the meat production, particularly in North Carolina, but across much of the United States. Like 80% of beef is controlled by these 4 companies. And she was saying, if you don't get your cows to the processor that they require, then the cows age out of what's ideal, and you have to slaughter your own cows, and you're done. You don't get to sell them, you don't get to do any of that. And she said in some cases it's a 2-year waiting list. You really got to, I mean, think about it as a business owner. You really got to target that and hope that you can get to that market in a timely manner. And, oh, by the way, you know how elected officials sometimes fudge the numbers, or if you insult somebody, now you get pushed down the list. That can cost you your business. So that theme of corruption, we're going to keep talking about that here. But so I followed up with the Uighur story. This is landmark, and when they use it here in the title, this is NBC News talking about a landmark complaint. It's never happened. So what they did was, some of the Uighurs, there are 2 different complaints filed with the International Court now, citing what's going on in China, in Beijing, for the mistreatment, the torture, all of these things. So this is a big story to watch. Yeah, that like I said, that's never happened before. And here you have this tiny minority group fighting huge entity in the Chinese government. So kudos to the Trump administration for doing something to assist in this effort. And it also may help with our local farmers, particularly in the South and in North Carolina. So do with that information what you will, but just to be objective.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So
No, I mean, come on now.
yeah,
This is...
sure. Yes, because the White House administration is so concerned with people, especially with the tag Muslim.
Well,
it doesn't have anything to do with this war,
or an election, right?
Or divert and distract from the administration's childlike maneuvers in the last 6 to 8 months on everything that they've had their hands on. But at least the result was good. So we'll take our little tiny victories in 2020 and call it a day, I guess.
Right. That's exactly right. So
the only other thing that I can suggest that was reminiscent of this is when Trump took office and completely stepped back from the TPP, which was an absolutely horrible thing that was going to destroy a lot of rights for labor and make rich people richer. And we'll forget the fact that the reason Trump got rid of it is because it's an Obama initiative, and that's the main driving force for anything he does. But the result was good, so we'll take our small miracle and call it a day.
Right. Okay. So yay. All right, so now we're going to move on to, okay, so that was the good. Now we're going to get to the bad. And this is where I need to make a full disclosure. So in the interest of integrity, so I already mentioned that we on our network, we are very much committed to progressive causes and candidates and all of these things, because we recognize that there's a cost to the technology, that there is a huge, well-funded corporate media narrative, and it is our goal as a little tiny organization to help others. And one of the ways that we do that is by providing our network and our technology for other groups to do streaming. We've done it for candidates to reach their constituents, and we do it now currently for the National Progressive Party, N as in Nancy, NPP. So we host their I guess it's the Wednesday updates, and we provide the technology and the production for them. In addition to that, I was briefly a member of the NPP organization as a communication consultant, because that's my career, public relations and communications. I stepped away a little while ago because I was uncomfortable with any kind of impropriety in that, you know, there's a conflict of interest, because I'm a journalist first, right? So now what I do is just primarily support them through this network, and occasionally I know that they're looking for a communications director, assist in that effort, because, you know, I am personally engaged in seeing not just the National Progressive Party, but I want the Green Party, and I want, you know, in my mind, if we had 4 or 5 parties, then we have coalition building, and you actually have to sit down at the table and listen to constituents. So that is my personal goal. So, so I want you to understand the context. So with this story, I am tangentially familiar with it, but I came in at the end of what was going on, and some of the information that I'm going to discuss, it's the first time I've seen it. So here's what happened. Little baby journalist Shane Coughlin out of New York. He's just starting out in his journalism career. He landed an interview a couple weeks ago with a gentleman by the name of Peter Bowling. You've heard me talk about Peter Bowling before, because Peter came after me, and he came after me in conjunction with Don Ford, naming me specifically, ignoring the rest of the entire organization here. So Don Ford had talked about how I stole the network from him. Peter jumped on board because Peter was using that to come after me so that I wouldn't say anything about what Peter was doing to try and co-opt and subvert the effort of the National Progressive Party. So you had, Andy, back me up. Am I saying anything that's wrong?
No, you're good so far. Keep her going.
Okay. All right. So I don't want people to continue to think, according to Peter and Don Ford, that I am in this all by myself. There's an entire organization behind me of people who aren't on camera, but do lots of great work and activism, things like that. So, all right. So that is pretty much the extent of my involvement in this. But Shane Coughlin had that interview, and based on that interview, he received information and went out and double checked it and found out that everything that Peter Bowling had told him about his relationship with the National Progressive Party was not true. So Shane reached out to me. I talked a little bit to him, and here is an excerpt of an interview. So I posted the link to Shane's interview that has been posted now, where he interviewed Joel, and sorry, Joel, I'm going to butcher your last name, Dizek. Thank you very much, Andy. See, again, still need the coffee. But Joel went on his program to talk about what Shane was finding, that none of the stories that Peter Bowling, Nick Clark, and this new guy, Derek Reuter, have been saying is not true. So here's why it's important. We know, based on this interview and some of the documents that have come out, that these individuals, Fazia is another one who's out of California, works at Oracle, I think. So so with this group, they are trying the same thing with the Rose Coalition and United Left. The same thing that they tried to do at NPP. So one of the things that I wrote about a couple times and have tried to expand upon is an effort by moneyed interests, in particular DCCC, sometimes the DNC, sometimes Republicans working with Democrats, like to subvert these efforts, and they have a couple different tactics. One is co-opting, because that's super easy. And with that, you appeal to either greed or vanity. So when you see somebody in an organization who's trying to elevate themselves above the objectives of the organization, who is being deceitful and all of these things, it's a pretty good red flag that that is a co-opt effort. If they're taking an individual and trying to sideline them, pretty good indication that's a co-opt effort. So for those who have worked with me on an organizing front for a specific goal, ballot initiative, campaign, whatever, I personally, and Andy can attest to this, I have a reputation for being difficult to work with. And that is true in two situations. Number one, if you're gonna lie, and two, break the law, then you do not want me on your team, because I'm always gonna be loyal to ethics, right? So with that said, every time I've been in one of these situations, there's always one. I guarantee you there's always at least one, and they will quietly take another person in the corner and try and convince them to be on their side. And it's a very manipulative, it's kind of a slow process. So what I want to do is, first, the NPP, if you recall NPP, and for those of you who haven't seen it, NPP issued this statement back in June. It was a little vague. It didn't name names, and you can find it on their Twitter feed, the website, things like that. So here they were talking about something happened in June, and what I liked about this particular piece is it took the high road. It didn't name people, but it kind of talked about what was happening, in particular because these people, the Nick Clarks, the Derek Reuters, Fazia, and I'll have to get her last name, and Peter Bowling have allegedly taken money from donations that were meant for NPP, right? So they are trying to co-opt all of this, and this is what the statement said, but they didn't name them specifically. So based on this interview that Shane Coughlin did, they are not only naming names, but they released documentation that I had not seen previously. I had heard about, but had not seen the documentation about this grievance process that all of these individuals were involved in, and some were forcibly removed from the organization because of their conduct. So we'll go through some of that. But real quick, so I watched the interview this morning, and Joel was cracking me up. So real quick, I just want to put this up here. So here's Joel talking with Shane Coughlin from New York.
Ready. Okay, so thank you for joining us today on Kerberos Roundtable Discussions. Today here with me I have Joel, who is the ethics chair for the National Progressive Party, who's headed up the investigation on Peter Bowling, has the information. So a couple weeks ago, I believe, I found Peter Bowling through a progressive Discord server. According to the links on his Discord page, it led me to believe that he was what he called himself, the executive director of the National Progressive Party. And he said, I asked him to come on for an interview, and he said, he would do so. And we had an interview, and the interview has since been pulled due to new evidence that shows that he's not the executive director of the National Progressive Party.
But I came on board initially just kind of trying to find my place in the organization and figuring out what is the best fit for what they need at the time. And at the time, I pointed out to our current director, that there was something amiss. There was something a little sideways, and it didn't quite set right.
Okay, so all right. For me personally, there were a couple things that just cracked me up about that. First, Joel's delivery. He's so yeah, that was an understatement, Joel. Absolute understatement, but I'm gonna get to that in a minute. The other part, from a journalistic standpoint, from Shane, I kind of feel where he's at, right? Because if I do an interview with somebody, and I try to do my due diligence, but if I do an interview and then I find out that person lied to me from beginning to end, oh, I'm pissed. I'm pissed. So I feel you,
Exactly.
Shane.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, when, as a journalist, especially someone trying to get some credibility and starting out, you know, as a serious journalist, you do your due diligence and looking into allegations and, you know, history and that kind of thing. But you never think that you're going to have to actually try to look into what one of your guests is actually stating is his occupation.
Right. Right. And you know, from that interview, and I did post the link to Shane's interview, he talks about everything that Peter Bowling said. He went and checked, and like nobody in Vermont, the Vermont Party, for whatever reason, the Vermont Party has been held up as this a gold standard, and maybe they are, but everybody wants to align themselves with this particular party. Maybe it's a Bernie thing. I'm not sure, but
It definitely is.
no, it's got to
Definitely
be
a Bernie thing.
Yeah, it's got to be. So nobody in Vermont knows who Peter is, and then all of these other organizations that Shane called, they don't know who Peter is. So okay, what's going on here? And as a journalist, okay, so behind the scenes, I'm gonna just let everybody know, don't tell anybody this happened. Okay. Last week, we had a run-in with a journalist at Southern Poverty Law, based on the interview that we did with Ryan Balch. Ryan Balch, as you recall, was one of the folks that was in Kenosha and was an eyewitness to what Kyle Rittenhouse was doing. So we had Ryan on to tell his side of the story. And then what happened was it was almost like theater, right? You had Southern Poverty Law come out with a story about Ryan's history. And then it was followed just like that by other corporate media picking it out. The other corporate media didn't name our program, just Southern Poverty Law talked about, and they didn't link to our program either, which, oh, okay, why didn't you? So when
Thanks a lot.
right? Because maybe Ryan was too much of a human on our show, right? So I actually reached out to that journalist and I was like, hey, what gives? You have some of the stuff factually inaccurate. And we had a good conversation because I personally, I like Southern Poverty Law. They don't get everything right. That nobody is infallible. But as a journalist, it's a courtesy call. Hey, here are these things that you, I think, misrepresented or got outright wrong. Explain to me how you came to this conclusion that you wrote about. So same thing with Shane, right? So I feel bad for Shane because you take people at their word and they seem sincere, and he had this guy representing himself as this great new effort. Come to find out he's lying, and people don't even know who he is. So one of the other things was this Derek Rueter, Rueter, Ritter, whatever. I've never met Derek. He was gone from NPP long before I ever got there. But I personally did some checking on Derek because Derek has this habit of doing something similar to what Peter was doing. So this is one of the standard emails that Derek sent out to another member of NPP. Derek is representing himself as the Assistant Treasurer and Development Chair for the National Progressive Party, PAC, P-A-C. So, and he goes on in this piece to talk about, just all this stuff, just allegations and threats and blah, blah, blah. So he apparently is doing this to quite a few people, because here's another person who has it. And then yesterday, one of our patron and advisors sent me a message and said he got one too from Derek. And he's like, I dismissed it because it read like, somebody's on meth. But so Derek and Nick are still going out to organizations, people, notable organizers, and claiming a position and an organization that is not true. Not true. Well, how do we know this? Well,
let me tell you.
Let me tell you the way. So part of, if you go out to Shane's interview, he has a link there to the complaints, the actual complaints, and how Derek was removed from NPP. So again, these are the documents I hadn't seen while I was there. I heard of them. I heard people speak to them, never read them. So what happened was, I got another clip from his interview that I want to play here in a minute. But just part of this was Derek acting a fool. Holy shit. Okay, so like, real quick, let me back up here. So I know that we're real casual and comfortable on the show. That's the whole nature of what we're doing. But when it comes to handling business, we're very professional. And we do things by the book. And I gotta tell you, with some of this complaints, the behavior that's outlined here, how this guy was not walked out the door immediately, I think, is a testament to the collaborative and cooperative nature of the organization itself. Right? So there was that old saying, I am not a member of an organized party, I'm a Democrat. That is exponentially more true when you deal with organizers on the left. Let's be honest, you'll have groups of people who want to do a drum circle, other people who want to talk about their feelings, and then there's all this inclusion, and those are great for organizing on the left around causes and events and things like that. Those are terrible for organizing a corporation that's going to take on some of the most powerful
and best funded.
Yes, organizations. And let's be honest, that is what a new party structure is going to do. They're going to hit you with all that they have. Co-opting, legal threats, personal character assassinations. They're going to come after you with legal. They're going to come after you. I mean, the first 4 death threats that I got were, from organizers who didn't want me to run for office, didn't like the things I was saying, whatever. Hey, Democrats. The first one I got to be honest, that was Tea Party. Then 2, 3, and 4 were Democrats. So this is what happens. This is the reality of it. So you have an organization that is building a corporation to do something that is extraordinarily difficult, because you've got to organize not just one entity, but a political party in 50 states and 4 districts. And each one has a different set of regulations and laws. And that effort requires some serious work, research, legal acumen, people who have an understanding of how FEC law works and all of these sort of things. It is not necessarily the best place for the drum circle crowd, who are absolutely vital and their voices matter. But these two things do not go together, right? So,
and they don't have the organizational skills.
No, they
do
don't.
Anything like that.
They've got enthusiasm and passion and great ideas. but that comes later. Right now, you're building the legal framework and all of these things. So kudos to the folks at MPP who did recognize it. And I'm gonna let Joel tell you what happened, but they actually organized a grievance process and a grievance board comprised of 3 members. I happen to know one of the members who was on that grievance board, and I gotta tell you, Peter, Nick, Derek, Fazia, you do not want to fuck with that guy. And let me tell you why. He's got 30 some years of union organizing experience in the grievance process, defending against massive corporations to help union members. You are not prepared for that shit. Okay, so we're talking about someone with a definite union thug with integrity and an eye towards making sure that all the laws are followed. So real quick here, I'm gonna post this other segment with Joel. So here it is.
Unfortunately, what was happening was there were some subversive elements that decided to try to take control of things and started guiding people in ways that they wanted, away from the actual framework and the actual design, the tenets of what the MPP was designed around. And that's when it became more serious. I specifically remember the day, May 13th, that things really, really had a massive impact and something had to happen. On that particular evening, one of the people on a national meeting, a national committee meeting, found out that there was going to be a grievance board initiated for a grievance concern. I happen to be one of those grievance board members, and was elected by my grievance board to be the spokesman. So that's how I became involved. But during this meeting, this person had decided to air all of their concerns ahead of the selection. Well, that right there kind of sets a funny tone. I happened to be actually in attendance for this meeting. There was about 45 minutes I was not in attendance for before the actual official meeting started. I got a recording later and was able to review that information. But that's kind of what set it off. During this airing, it was clear that it was designed to circumvent proper protocol. Demands were made to make decisions right then and there, which you know how this goes. I think anybody with any reasonability knows that split-second knee-jerk decisions are never a good thing.
Okay, so yeah, this is I think Joel, kudos to Joel. He's still trying to be nice and he's trying to be professional, but wow. So I'm going to put up some more pages of the complaint because of course my dog started barking now. So here's that information. Some things I thought were pretty telling here. So again, going back to Derek, attempted to bribe and blackmail the organization. What the fuck, right? If the minute somebody does something like that, this is when I become hard to work with.
Isn't it funny how the two things go together like that?
Right. So Derek has also continually dishonest claims which breach the code of ethics. Again, what the fuck, right? So and this is from the 3-member grievance board, right? So here's another piece of it, and the red boxes are mine because these are the findings from the grievance board. And I remember Peter Bowling telling me personally that he doubted the findings of the grievance board because he made the allegation that, well, Joel is friends with Ellie, therefore the whole process is negated. And I'm like, Peter, there were 2 other people on the board. Well, maybe Joel was able to coerce them into deciding. And I'm like, and I told Peter then, look, I know Mike. And there's no way in hell, first of all, anybody's going to be able to talk him into doing anything he doesn't want to do. Second, he has no problem standing up against an entire army of corporate lawyers to hold firm on ethics. Do you think for a second he's afraid of the other 2 members? Do you think that he has any vested interest or personal gain in going against what they say to side with ethics? Do you think that he didn't look at all the documents that you provided, which was minimal at best? These were hearsay, and all of these pieces that you say prove something that don't. It's just your word. Do you really think that that particular gentleman is going to be swayed into siding with everyone else? How about we look at the fact that the evidence and argument that you put forward is baseless? And that is why these findings were set against you. So from a public relations perspective, I gotta tell you, in my profession, there's no way in hell would I have allowed these documents to be released, because it has a potential blowback for people who don't have good reading comprehension or critical thinking skills. They would take those documents and manipulate them for their own gain. However, from a journalistic standpoint, I think that, yeah, I want to see it all. So there's one more page here that I wanted to put up. And again, all of these documents, they've released them all. It's in Shane's interview. If you go to the comment section, he's got the links to them. But this one, here's Nick Clark and Derek and all of these folks who are claiming to represent the party, represent the organization. Here they are actually being cited for ethics violations, for theft, for coercion, for lying, all of these things by this 3-person board, a process that they themselves agreed to until the findings came out against them. Then they decided, well, it was unethical, right? Who does that sound like when you have a system set up where if it doesn't go my way, I'm going to call it, it's rigged, it's fixed, it's rigged. Any guesses?
Someone that might be orange.
Yeah. So this is part of the critical thinking that we try to encourage here, is with all things being equal and you have the information in front of you, let's be reasonable about it here. So if you have this impartial board, let's say they're not impartial. Let's say they're not. Let's say I don't know anything about them. But the evidence that is provided by the side that is making the complaint does not rise to the level to support the argument they're making. Where do you go? It leaves you with no choice but to say maybe this isn't, the lawn guy's going off, but maybe it isn't what you think it is. And there's a difference between hurting someone's feelings and actual outright conduct that rises to the level of being removed. So we know that Derek himself was removed. Peter stepped down, and I've talked about why Peter stepped down, because he made the phone call to me, threatened me, and I advised him based on FEC law that what he was doing was illegal, and I advised him, you have 24 hours to either resign or I'm going to file a grievance against you. So that was me personally, my experience with Peter. So one of the other things that, just because I know how to do my damn job, I didn't know who Derek was. So I went to his LinkedIn profile where Derek himself is, he's got it all over there that he's some sort of person in this organization, and he's not. But then he also lists these other organizations that he said he was a co-chair of or founder of or whatever. So I started making phone calls. And I spoke to a couple people in Lafayette, Indiana, where he said he was an organizer. And he said that he was working with certain other charities. And what I found, a couple of these people were not willing to go on the record, so I will respect their privacy. Others are. And what I found was allegations that Derek himself has a pattern of trying to shake down organizations and charities in order to get paid. One person I spoke to said, yeah, he kept trying to pressure us to pay him, and we're all volunteers, but what he was out for was money. So what I'm hoping is this other individual who said that he would be willing to come on the record and talk about his experience with organizing with one of these people in particular will still do so. But it's just this. This is why we can't have nice things. And I think as progressives, we need to start recognizing these things. Like we've done these interviews with Joseph Trina, who was coming from Georgia, the same party where you had Democratic elected officials endorsing Trump, and then doing this bogus scam on Joseph because Joseph wanted, to save lives and bring in new members. They hit him with what was it, harassment, or I forget what it was. There was some charge that they leveled against him, which, still one piece of it is out there, all to keep Joseph from going to a Democratic Party meeting. So these dirty tricks and things that they do, none of it is brand new because it works. They just pull, one of these pieces that fits the situation and just keep doing it over and over and over again. Because as progressives, we have passion, but we don't have the experience. And boy, you better get it quick. And so when somebody like me who's been around a little bit and seen this stuff happen, watched it go down, held the hand of someone else that was a victim of it, talked them through it, coaching other candidates, you better listen, because there's a whole lot of time, money, effort, and tears if you don't. So this is my personal plea to the Rose Coalition and to United Left. Stop listening to people who just come out of nowhere and make you promises and make you feel good and say they're going to do things. You got to vet these people. At least, Shane made a phone call and he was able to find out that what they were saying is not true. Are you doing the same thing? Or are you just being so leaned into collaboration that you're absolutely going to take everybody? And at what point is enough information out there for you to make a decision about these folks? I'm a little, Andy, what the hell? I mean.
Well, and I think this just speaks to inexperience, right? I think that a lot of times people that get into the activism end of politics, especially in the U.S., is more of a necessity than a calling, right? Because they're stuck in a dead-end job, or they have a lot of medical debt, or what have you, and that usually kickstarts somebody's activism is when they have their own personal need, right? And then I think that a lot of times that can be corrupted by simply the promise of cash, right? And there's something that people are hurting. They want to make sure that they provide for their families, and it's a difficult thing when you have, you're struggling and trying to keep your head above water, and then you put that against your moral fiber and your beliefs, and it's a difficult choice for a lot of people, right? It's a difficult. Do I stay the course? And we've talked about this before, and I think that's why you and I have been so successful at maintaining our integrity, is that we determined from the very beginning that it was all about us always taking the high road, that you can't live in a glass house if you're going to throw stones. And we can't point to the bad actors in politics, which is pretty much everybody, and say, well, look at them, if we turn around and we don't take the high road every single time. That's a way that you have to approach this. That's the way that we have to come at a third party. And there's going to be growing pains of this nature because there are people in the movement that have been doing this for a long time. But the reason they're doing it, they found a niche for themselves where they were able to get some money and provide for their own families. But quite honestly, once you've taken that first check or bribe or whatever, you're now corrupted, right? And that's a problem, right? That can always be pointed to by mass media that say, well, look, they're no better, right? They're the exact same. They're just trying to take away our rights and whatever. So that's such an important thing. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be a real fight to organize enough people at this level that are in it for the moral reasons, in it for the moral high ground. And it doesn't surprise me that these kind of things happen, right? Especially when you're dealing with the platforms. Really the only platforms that are available to us are platforms that are maintained by corporations that are, against the voices of progressives, right? So you see that with the algorithms on Facebook and the ability to allow someone like Trump to tweet whatever he wants. And I remember getting a 24-hour ban from Twitter because I posted something about COVID.
True. True story.
That's just the way it is. And I think those are just growing pains. But if we stick at it and we take the high road every time, eventually we figure out the way forward together. I've always said that progressives are just a whole bunch of people in a really long boat. Everybody has an oar. We just have to learn to sit in the same direction and all row at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think to your analogy, first, Andy, you're always the voice of reason. So thank you. And second, to your analogy, not everybody needs to be in the same boat either, right? So if you're supporting Nick Brana's effort for the Movement People Party, go for it. Have a great time. I wish you the best of luck. If you're in the Green Party, I have a few suggestions, but go for it. Have a great time. I think what to me attracted me to volunteer my personal time to NPP was they were starting from the bottom up, not the top down, with their focus on races. So that particularly appealed to me because I agree with that philosophy. It's not that I'm against these other efforts. It's just for my personal time, which is limited, that's where I chose to spend it. And also, I want to give a shout out to Ellie. I can only imagine what she's going through. And for those of you who don't know my background, I used to have a small woman-owned business with my business partner. We were members of the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce here in Illinois. We actually sponsored the Pride Parade one year. We had a small boutique marketing firm. And ours was the first business targeted under the DCCC blacklist policy. So we tried to push back and fight back because we were donating our time and talents to progressive candidates. And here in Illinois, it's extraordinarily difficult to, number one, get justice, two, get support from other progressives, because we had people who were trying to co-opt our effort and say that, oh, well, that's just, it's not going anywhere. And other people will say, oh, they don't really mean it, even though we had all this evidence. We had video evidence, we had written evidence, we had all the things. And if you're curious and want to deal into that, it's heroic.rocks was our company. So I feel for her because I went through 2.5 years of systematic targeting, defamation, all of these things, and then dealing with lawyers and court cases. So I feel for her on this one, but I hope that people will recognize the behaviors that are happening and see it for what it is. And then kudos to Ellie, because Ellie went out and not only did she say she was working with, she and others in the organization were working with legal authorities on a federal level, but Ellie went and filed a police report on the specific harassment that she is getting from, it looks like Derek, Peter, who else is named on that? I think it's Derek and Peter, and I'm having trouble reading the rest of it. But these two individuals are allegedly engaging in cyber stalking and harassment, electronic harassment, misuse of electronic communications. So she filed a police report against them, right? So to me as a journalist, that has weight, as opposed to you just telling me something, right? So if Derek wants to say that Ellie or whomever broke the law, show me the proof. Show me that you filed a police report or something else. They haven't done it. It's been months. And what I have on the other side is NPP, those officials dealing with the FBI, dealing with the FEC, dealing with Facebook and Twitter and all of these other organizations to prove their case, prove and defend their trademark, and as well as local and state police departments and other organizations. So kudos to you for pushing back and doing it in a measured, reasonable, adult fashion, instead of what these other folks are doing, which is really all they have. All they have is these quiet little snipes, individual messages, threats, and things like this behind the scenes. That's really all they have.
And they're not specific. They don't ever name anything specific at all. And that's, I was going to mention that earlier, that I've always ever seen it described as numerous frauds, right? They never tell you what frauds they are. They just, involved in frauds, right? Which is an all-encompassing word that you use when you're basically spewing bullshit.
That's exactly right. So, show me the money, show me the proof. Where is your filing with the FBI? Where is your filing with state and local agencies? Where is your filing with Facebook and Twitter and Crowdpack and all of these things that you say that you have authority over? But all I can see is the people working at NPP who have that and are having a fight. And here's my thing, as a progressive, seeing what's going on, the shit shows going on in politics, I need the NPP to succeed. I need Nick Branagh's thing to succeed ethically, and I need you to pose a viable challenge to the duopoly. My life depends on it. My son's life depends on it. But yet we have to stop and address the bullshit from grifters and liars at every damn turn. And when you have organizations like the United Left and Rose Coalition, all these other people not doing their due diligence, you stall the entire thing. Please just, maybe do some checks on things. If somebody makes an allegation, hey, your neighbor is over there, he's a pedophile. What do you do with that? Do you check into it? Do you dismiss it? What are you going to do? And then the person who made the allegation, is it credible? Is it not? Or do you just bury your head in the sand? You've got to be an adult and be responsible, especially if you're an organizer in one of these progressive organizations. And we just saw it yesterday. What was it? Some DNC person went after Ryan Knight and called him a Russian bot. And when,
I know, isn't that insane?
Yeah, and the response was beautiful and exactly what should happen. You had all of these other progressive leaders and regular folks push back on that and say, no, that's not okay. That's not true. And you're doing this just to get clicks. We need to have that happen in these organizations too. So if you have these folks in your organization, my first question to you is, what due diligence are you prepared to do? And then what risk are you willing to take by continuing to have these elements in your organization? You know, I can't answer that for you, but definitely going to be watching to see what happens because we don't have time for it. We just don't. So
We know that the reason that happens is, and you've said it already, it works, right?
mhm.
The allocations on page 1, the retractions on page 37, if there is one. Right? We just went through that with California progressive candidate for Congress, Shahid Buttar, right? With the allegation that came up with no basis, no evidence, nothing. Right? A little bit of due diligence in looking into it showed that the person that did this allegation was someone that's had this tactic before. That's that supports Nancy Pelosi. He's running against, right? It's easy to make the allegation, and people just see the headline, right? They don't look into it. That's why it works. Is why it happens is because it works, and we have to figure out a way without the support of 99% of the media, without support of 99.99% of the money, right, to move forward and try to build a better future and a just society for all people, right? And that's the hard part. That's the kicker. That's what makes it tough. And until we can all get on the same page and understand that the morality is what drives us, right? The unjustness of society in the last 50 years of neoliberal rule and the orangutan in chief that currently sits in the White House, right? Which is a symptom, certainly not a cause. But those are our opponents, right? They have everything. We have nothing except numbers.
Oh,
we have to
absolutely.
figure out how to go forward.
Yeah, and to your point, if I encourage people to go out and read these documents that were posted, but in the documents themselves, you have this gentleman, Derek, I'm using it loosely, Derek, who recanted earlier allegations and statements that he made against others. So he acknowledges that he spoke untruths or fucking outright lied, and then had to retract those statements, and then continued to do it. So, you know, I don't blame him for removing him from the organization. There are ways to do it. You can do it politely, take the Andy route, and say, you know, maybe this just isn't a good fit for you, or you can take my route and what the fuck are you doing? Get out. So whichever way works for you, those are things that maybe you consider. So Andy, you are always the voice of reason. It's just so nice.
How sad is that?
Right. So I didn't get to the comments in the chat, and I apologize. We try to be interactive here. We actually did have Joel from the video fame that we showed in the comments, and then other people who popped in to say hi, good morning. Like I said, this is my Monday, so I was not really on my game this morning. But Friday we'll be back. And one of the things that I'm working on, because this is another one that is near and dear to me, is the trial of Julian Assange. So whether you agree with him, you don't agree with him, all of the things that surround the story, what we have is first we have the NSA and all of these folks. Snowden was just exonerated, but still has charges pending. But all of that stuff has come out now. Why is Julian still on trial? And that is what I want to talk about, because as a journalist, we see the outright assault on journalists all over the world. So I think his case and what's happening to him is really important for everyone to pay attention to. And like I said, with this critical thinking, what is the evidence that we have against this particular gentleman? What is he being charged with? Is that evidence credible based on what we know now? And how do we move forward, right? Because damn near prepared for the day where I get arrested for smuggling, I don't know, sugar gliders or something ridiculous. And I want to prepare people that maybe she didn't actually do this.
Right, exactly. And just to be on the safe side, I'm not tearing off any more labels on mattresses.
Exactly. Don't do it. Don't do it. So with that, I think we'll get out of here. Or at the top of the hour, and we've done enough complaining, bad news, good news. So we'll be back here on Friday. And
Yes, where Carrie will and her trusty sidekick Andy, the Princess of Denmark, will be back.
yes, absolutely. You're the Princess of Denmark now. Okay.
Yes,
I'm gonna make a new title for you on the bottom there. So
thank you. If you could get a meme crown for me as well.
Absolutely. Oh, you know I can. Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right.
Okay. So we'll see you back here Friday. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
The dark, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keep it G. Whoa.